Hello YouTube, Raul here. In this video we're gonna finish the Redux Toolkit introduction series with a small to-do list app in which we're gonna use createEntityAdapter so that we don't have to write any reducer logic. Now let me first show you a demo of what we are going to build. We have an input section here at the top where you can write stuff. So let's say like this, and if you separate them by comma, then separate items will be added to your to-do list. These to-dos just have a checklist so you can toggle their state. Also, you can delete these to-dos and they will be moved to the deleted section from which you can restore them. And if you delete a checked item after you restore it, it will be restored unchecked, because I consider that you may want to restore your checklist, let's say if you do the same thing multiple times. Also here at the top we have a clear all to-dos, which will just erase our list but not move anything into the deleted section. You could also add the logic to move them to the deleted section, but I prefer to have a button that can erase everything. So let's get started. First, I have a blank React app right here from which I just removed the unnecessary files which I'm not gonna be using. I kept the app.css and added some default styling, the exact styling we have right here, just so we don't waste time, because it's just basic styling. You can get it from my GitHub account. I'll leave the link in the description below. You can copy the CSS and come back after this. I didn't want to style it too much because you can add your own styling later and make it your own. And I also went ahead and installed Redux, React Redux, and Redux Toolkit, just so we can get started. So I'm gonna run npm start and let's get going. So first thing we are going to do is create our store folder. In this I'm gonna go with the store.js. We're gonna create the store with configure store from Redux Toolkit. Then we're gonna create a store. It's gonna be configure store, and for the moment we're gonna leave the reducer key empty, and I'm gonna export default store. Now we can go into index.js, import the provider from React Redux, and also import the store we created, and wrap our app inside the provider and pass the store to it. Okay, move this, and now we should have our store. We can check this and see if we have Redux DevTools, because Redux Toolkit adds the DevTools by default, and I didn't refresh the page. See, we have the Redux DevTools, so that means our store was connected. Now let's first get our to-do slice created and add the reducer to the store, so we have everything set up for our project. So we're gonna import create slice from Redux Toolkit. Then we are going to create the to-do slice. It's gonna be create slice. The name is gonna be to-dos. The initial state, for the moment we're gonna set it to an empty array, but we'll change that in a moment when we start using createEntityAdapter. And for the reducers, we're also gonna just put a blank object for the moment. Now let's export our actions before first as named exports. So I'm just gonna leave this blank for the moment, and we'll put our actions when we create them inside this. And also export default the to-do slice reducer. Okay, now let's finish setting up the store. We're gonna get the to-do reducer from the slice we created and add it to our configure store. Now, if we refresh the app and check the state, we will see we have to-dos as an empty array. Great. Now, let's go on with the Redux logic. So I'm going to create the Redux logic or some of it at the start, and then we'll continue with the application and build on top of it. For that, instead of just writing our reducers like you normally would, I want to do this a little bit differently today. I want to show you createEntityAdapter. It's one of the functions from Redux Toolkit, and it allows you full create, read, update, and delete possibilities without actually having to write the logic for the reducers. You will see there's a small downside that it makes you use a specific kind of state structure, but it's not that bad, especially for small application. So we're going to import createEntityAdapter from Redux Toolkit, and then I'm also going to export it. So we're going to export the to-do, I'm going to call it to-do adapter, and it's going to be just a call to create entity adapter. Now, this entity adapter will give us a lot of functionality throughout our app. One of the things it does is creates a set of memoized selectors. So we're going to export those as well. To do selectors. And here we will do to do adapter, get selectors, and we're going to have to specify which part of our state we want. So we will want the state to-dos. You will see when we get to the component how exactly we will use these selectors. Okay, now I told you we will change this initial state. So the adapter forces us to have a specific kind of state, and we will get that state from it. So we'll get to do adapter, get initial state, and we will just call this function and it will give us a predefined state. So let me show you what that means. Here, if we go into Redux, let me make this okay, you will see it created an IDs array which will contain the IDs for all our to-dos, and it creates an entity object which will have the to-do items we create, with the keys being the IDs that will be in this array right here. Okay, now for the reducers, I'm gonna create one so you can see how this is going to work. So let's name the reducer first. I'm gonna name it add to do, and we're gonna get to do adapter, and this provides us with some built-in reducers. So let's see which those are. Here in the documentation you can see all of them. It's add one, which will add a single item to our to-do state. Then you can add more with add many. You can remove one or more. You can set the whole entities array. This will replace your whole entity array with whatever you pass to it. You can update stuff. You can delete from it. So it pretty much gives you CRUD functionality out of the box. You just have to call it like this. So it's to do adapter and then add one. Add one. And this is it. This will, if we call this action right here, it will add an item to our to-do list. I'm going to export it, and we're going to our app, and let me show you how easy it is to work with this. I'm going to create a new folder for our components. Inside this folder, I'm going to have an add to do folder and an add to do.js. Okay, so here I'm gonna import React from React. I'm also going to get use state because we're going to have inputs here. Then I'm going to get use dispatch from React Redux because we are going to dispatch some actions. And from, let's also get the add to do action right now. We're gonna get it from the store and to do slice. And one last thing I want to import is nano ID from, we're gonna get it from Redux Toolkit because I didn't install the nano ID package. Redux Toolkit just offers you the nano ID functionality. So it's a function exported, re-exported from the nano ID library, which will create a random ID for your app. If you need this, it's readily available, so you don't need to just create random IDs by yourself. And then let's export a component. Okay, and return some JXX. I'm just gonna put a div for the moment and export default add to do. Okay, so this will be our add to do component. Now let's add some logic to it. So first let's build the UI. To this div, so we can get the styling I created, we're gonna add a class called add to do. Now inside of this, we need to pass those, first we will need to add those two paragraphs that with the instructions on how to use them. So I'm gonna copy them right here. There are two paragraphs. One of them says you have to write items separated by comma and an example which is italic. Okay, next, let me save it. Okay, let me also import this into app.js so we can see what we're doing. From and components, add to do, and put it right here, add to do. Okay, and you can see our hints on how to use the input. Now let's create that input. The value is gonna be text. I'm gonna create this text in a minute with use state, and then we're gonna have an onChange listener with which will just set the text to event.target.value. So before this throws an error, let's create that text and set text. It's gonna be use state, and we're gonna pass an empty string by default. Now we have our input, and the last thing we have to do here is add a button which is gonna say add to do, and on click we are going to call a function that's called submit. And let's also create this function because this is the part where we actually get to use the Redux actions. So the first thing, I'm just gonna dispatch. So if we have some text in this text field, so if text.length is greater than 0, because I don't want to add empty strings to our to-do list, because that doesn't make any sense. If that happens, we have to dispatch the action. So let's use the dispatch hook that we imported first. So use dispatch. Now using this dispatch, we can dispatch the add to do that we got before. And to this, we have to give it an object which will contain an ID, which we'll get using nano ID, and also the to do, which is gonna be the text, and also completed is gonna be false. Well, we're gonna add this state by default. Okay, so now if let's refresh the page and see if that works. So eggs, add it, and you see the add to do action. And what this reducer from the createEntityAdapter did, so this one right here, it added the ID to the IDs array. So you can see the state here. The IDs array got an item in it, and the entities also received an item with that ID as a key, which contained the data that we sent. So the configuration object has to contain the ID that we want. This won't generate the IDs by default. Okay, but I told you in the example that we'll want to separate these items right here. If we have commas, we'll want to add multiple to-dos to our list. But right now we can do it. So I'm gonna comment this out. Actually, I'm going to leave the if. I'm just gonna comment the dispatch. Next thing we are going to do is let's create a constant called items, in which we're gonna use the split function on the text from the input box, and we're gonna split the items by a comma. So this function will return an array of strings, and every time it hits a comma, it will add a new item to that array. So if we have, let's say, eggs, ham, and cheese, then it will add eggs, it will remove the comma, then the next item in the array will be ham, remove the comma, and cheese. So this is the way this works. Okay, now I'm gonna show you two methods to do this. The second one will be much better from a performance point of view, but I want to also show you the first method. So I'm gonna leave a comment right here that's gonna be first method. So we're gonna go through the items with for each, and we're gonna get the item. And now for every item that we got, we are going to dispatch the add to do with the ID nano ID. The text is gonna be item, and completed is gonna be false. So we will just loop through the array and add and dispatch an action for every item. Now, as you may imagine, this isn't very good performance wise, but for the moment this is all we have. So you can see 3 items, 3 dispatched actions. Now if I would have, let's say, 100 items, it will dispatch 100 actions, so that's not really good. We would preferably want to add all the items at once. So here we are going to have the second method. For this, we are going to go back to the to-do slice and add a new reducer. This is gonna be called add to-dos. We're gonna get it again from the to-do adapter, but we are going to add many. This will just take on an array with all the to-do items that we want to add. So let's also export the add to-dos, and back in our add to-do component, we are going to get it, and we have to manipulate our items array a little bit so we can dispatch all the actions at once. So we're gonna call dispatch the add to dos, and inside this add to dos we have to give it an array of items. So we're gonna go through the items, map them, and get the item, and from this we are going to return an object, again nano ID. You know how this works. The text is gonna be the item, and completed is gonna be false. And I'm gonna comment the first one out. So now if I refresh, I'm gonna copy these right here and add to do. You can see only one action was dispatched, but if we check our state and the entities, we have 4 items in the array. So way better performance wise. Okay, now let's see what we can do about the to-do list. So let's display the items that we have added inside our Redux store. So let's create another folder, which is going to be called to-do list. Inside this to-do list.js. So let's import a React from React. Then we are going to need some stuff from React Redux, which are gonna be use selector and use dispatch, because we're also gonna, with use selector, we'll get items from the state, and we're also gonna dispatch some other actions. Okay, then let's import the to-do selectors that we exported from the to-do slice. You remember I told you these creates it creates some memoized selectors. We exported them right here. Okay, so for the moment this is gonna be it. Then let's create our component function. We are going to return a div, and at the end export default the to-do list. Okay, now inside of this to-do list, let's first add the basic elements, the static ones. So first let's add the class name of to-do list from the CSS file I created. Now we're going to have, actually I'm gonna copy the h3, so that's the h3, and let's also, we will have an h4 here. Oh, wait, so h4, which is gonna say count. For the moment it's just gonna say count. We are not going to actually have the values in it, but we will add them in a moment. Then the button that will clear all our to-dos. So class name is gonna be delete btn, and on click, for the moment we are going to leave it empty, and it's gonna say clear all to-dos. Okay, so now let's refresh. Okay, I didn't add the component into app.js. Let's do that. To-do list from components, and to-do list, to-do list. Okay, it doesn't like that I added the on-click empty. I'm gonna remove it for now. And we don't see anything. Oh, okay. Here the to-do list, and now we should be good. So we got your to-dos, the count, and the button. For the moment, no data inside of them. Let's add some data. We got the selectors from the to-do slice. Let's transform those into the to-dos. So we're gonna have a constant called all to-dos. It's gonna be, we're gonna call use selector, and here, normally to this selector we would pass a function that would return some part of the state, but now we don't have to worry about that. We're just gonna call to-do selectors, and here you can see here are the first 5 items in my autocomplete. So it is select all, which will give us all the state. Select by ID, we will just get an item by the ID that we provide to it. Select entities will give us all the items in the entities object. select IDs would give us the IDs array, and select total will give us the number of items that we have inside our entities object. So for this, we are going to use select entities, and this will give us these entity objects. Now I'm going to create a to-do list array. Inside of this, we are going to put all our JSX. So let's do a for in loop. So const ID in all to-dos. Now here we are going to check if object has own property call, and we're gonna pass add to-dos and the ID. This way we're gonna check if our object has the ID the property that's in the ID, just to make sure that everything works as expected. And we're gonna get a to-do item, which is gonna be all to-dos ID. So we're gonna get the object with the ID key. Okay, now we're gonna add a to-do list. We're gonna push an item to this to-do list array that we created, which is gonna be another component that we have to create. So let's create it before we move on. So a new file, todo.js, and here I will just import React from React. Then I'm gonna import use dispatch, because we're also gonna dispatch something from this component. I might as well do it right now. And let's create the to-do component. We are going to destructure the props, so we're gonna get the text, the completed state, and the ID. And let's return, it's gonna be a div. This div will have a class name of to-do, and inside of it we are going to have to put a checkbox. So it's gonna be an input of type checkbox. Okay, the value for it is gonna be our completed state. Next, we have to attach an onChange listener, so we dispatch something when whenever we toggle that input for the checked to do. So this is gonna be a toggle to do. Actually, let's just call it toggle. Okay, next let's put a span here with the text of the to do and a button. And the onClick handler for it is gonna be delete item, and it's gonna have an X in it. Okay, I should also create the toggle functions. So one of them, we're just gonna create some empty arrow functions for the moment, and we're gonna come back to them later when we will update each to do, and we will also add the delete functionality to it. But for the moment this should work. Let's export default the to do and go back to our to do list, import to do from to do, and here back to pushing items into our array, we're gonna push a to do, to which we will have to give some properties. First is gonna be the key, which is gonna be to do, what did I call it, to do item, to do item dot ID. Now the next one is gonna be, I'm just gonna copy it and rename it because we can't access the key inside our component, but we're gonna need the ID. Then completed is gonna be to do item dot completed, and the text is gonna be to do item dot text. And now let's put it inside our component. So here, let's put let's just put a div, and let's put the to-do list right here. For the moment, nothing changed, but if I add some to-dos here, we will see the items are added to our list. And if I do some separated by comma, then more will be added. For the moment, the delete functionality is not there, but we can add the items. Okay, now the next thing we have to do here is, well, let's display this count right here, because that's really easy. So we're gonna create a new constant here that's called to do count, and again we're gonna use the same selectors that we created before, and these to do selectors have a select total on them. This will give us the count for all our items. So this is really easy. We don't have to do anything else. Just put the total count here. To do count actually. Okay, so now you can see we have 5 items. I add 3 more and they are added to the list. Now let's go to the delete to the to do component and add some toggle functionality for the state and the delete functionality. Back in our to do slice, we have to create the actions for our update and for our delete. So the delete to do is gonna just be the to do adapter, and we're gonna remove 1. Now this is going to expect an ID, and it's gonna remove that ID from the list. So this is gonna be really easy. Also, let's do the clear to-dos, because we have to attach that to the clear all to-dos button. So it's gonna be to-do adapter dot remove and remove all. This is gonna just erase our list. And while we're here, we might as well just create the update to do a reducer, which is gonna be to do adapter and update 1. So we created 3 actions. These are gonna go really quick. So delete to do, clear to do's, and update to do are also gonna be exported now. Now let's go back to the component and add the functionality. So first let's call the use dispatch hook here. Use dispatch. And let's add the delete functionality at first. So import from the store, and we're gonna get it from the slice. We're gonna have delete to do, and I'm also gonna import update to do here. The delete to do is going to be really easy. We're gonna dispatch delete to do, and we're going to pass the ID that we got as a prop to it. This should be all that's needed. So let's see if that works. I didn't refresh the page actually. Let's add some items, and delete worked and it removed the item from the list. The count also updated. The clear all to do's is also really simple. We go back into our to do list. I'm gonna copy this use dispatch call so we go quicker. So we call use dispatch, and here in clear all to do's we're gonna have a on click handler, which is gonna be an arrow function that's gonna dispatch, and I have to import that from the to do slice. So we're gonna get it right here, clear to do's. And we dispatch clear to do's here. Now if we refresh the page, add some items to the list, and clear to do's is gonna if we look at the state, it's empty right now. So this was really easy. Now the next one is gonna be the toggle functionality for each of the to-dos. So when we click this input right here, we are going to have to toggle the state for the to-do. Okay, this is gonna be another call to dispatch, and we are going to dispatch the update to-do action. And this update to-do needs an object to be passed to it as configuration. So we have to pass the ID for the object that we want to update and the changes key, which for us is just gonna be completed and it's gonna be not completed. So whatever state we have for our to do, we're just gonna invert that because we know it's either true or false. So let's see if that worked. I'm gonna change it, add the to do, and when we toggle it, you can see we have an update to do action, and let's see how that changes our state. So here we have our to do. Now it's true. When we click it, it changed to false. So that also works. Now the last thing we have to do is add our delete and restore functionality to the app. So here you can now press the delete button and it deletes your item, and press the clear all to-dos. For the moment none of it is saved, so you can restore the to-do that you have deleted. For this, we are going back to our to-do slice and we're gonna have to do some changes to it. So first, to the initial state, now using this todoadapter.getInitialState, we can also add to that state by passing an object to it. Here we are going to pass an array with the key deleted to-dos. So inside of this array, we are going to add the to-dos that we have deleted, so we can move them back and forth between our to-dos. Now, in this delete to-do, because we added the move to the deleted array only for the delete to-do, not for clear to-dos, we're gonna have to change it a little bit. So let's delete that. We're gonna use the function form of the reducer. So here todoAdapter, and we can do remove one, the same as before, but instead of passing it some, wait, it's not an arrow function, it's just a normal function. So we're gonna have to call it and pass the state and the action to it, and it will know how to, and I forgot the comma here. So now the same functionality should be available as before. We added to do and we deleted. Nothing changed. But now we can do some other things right here. So for example, we can add to state.delete to-dos. We can push the state, and now we have to get the to-do item that was deleted. Remember that in the action.payload, we will get the ID of that to do. So we can get state.entities to access that object, and from that object we have to get the key that's in our action.payload. Now if we look at our Redux store again, let's refresh the app. I add two to-dos, and if I delete one, you can see in the diff tab, our deleted to-dos got some info in it. To be more explicit, you can check it right here. It's the whole to-do object that we have deleted. Okay, but this doesn't solve the restore part. We're gonna fix that in a moment, but first let's add the deleted to-dos to our list right here so we can see them, and add the restore button. So for the deleted to-dos, we're gonna create another selector. So it's gonna be deleted to-dos use selector, but for these we don't have a selector from the to-do selectors. We just have to create one manually. So it's gonna be state dot let me check. It's gonna be state dot to-dos dot deleted to-dos, because that's what we call them right here. So this is gonna be the deleted to-dos array. Now let's do deleted list is gonna be deleted to-dos dot map, and we're gonna get an item here. And from this item, now I'm not gonna add too much styling to it, but we're just going to return a div. This div is gonna have the class name of deleted to do and the key of item.id. Okay, and now we just display the data. So we get the to do dot not to do adapter, to do dot text inside of a span, and also we're gonna create a button which is gonna say restore, as you saw in the example, and the on-click handler is gonna be a dispatch to something. For the moment we don't have anything. Actually, it's not gonna be a dispatch, my mistake right here. It's gonna be a call to a function. So we're gonna call a restore function, and we're gonna pass the ID to it. Actually, the item.id. Okay, so this restore function is gonna be the one that's gonna be responsible for restoring the item to our current to-dos. Okay, it's item.text right here, and restore is not created, so let's create it empty for the moment so it doesn't throw an error. Now here at the bottom we're gonna do another h3, which is gonna say deleted to-dos, and below it we have a div with, I named it delete list. Okay, and now we have our deleted to do right here. So let's add some more eggs. Okay, we added some to-dos, and if we delete to-dos, they appear here in this section. Nothing happens to the when we try to press the restore button for the moment. That's what we're gonna add now. So for the restore functionality, we're gonna go back to the reducer and create another reducer here. So it's gonna be called the restore to do. We're gonna do again the functional form for it, and first thing we are going to do is use the to do adapter and the add one from it, and we're gonna add the to do that we pass back to it. So this way we just give it the to do that we want to add, and it will add it back to our list. We don't have to worry about that. Now for removing the item from the to-dos array, we don't have anything we can do, just change the state manually. So we're gonna change the state.deleted to-dos to be equal to state deleted to-dos, and we're gonna filter them by, and let's get the item, and we're gonna get back all the items for which the ID doesn't match the action.payload.id. So this means in the payload we are going to send the whole to-do object, and we're gonna filter this to-do list so it only returns back the IDs which are not in that payload. Okay, now going back to the to-do list, wait, I didn't export it. So here we have to export the restore to do. So in the to-do list, we import the restore to do, and inside the restore function, we will dispatch the restore to do, and we have to get the to do here and add it to our restore function. And here where we call the function, when we press the button, we don't send just the ID, we will send the whole item. Okay, now let's refresh and see if that works. So we add an item, we delete it, it moves back, it moves to the deleted to-dos, and we press restore, it moves back. But let's add some more. If we press the clear all to-dos, they are just deleted. So it works as in the demo. So this was it. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a longer one, and it was a more deep dive into how createEntityAdapter from the Redux Toolkit library works. But I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like the video and tell me in the comments below if you want me to make more videos like this. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and have a great day.